Okay. Thank you so much, Azba,
Uh,
for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, what's been your journey? I know you've worked in political consulting. You very closely follow politics.
Yes, so I've worked in a varied in varied roles and responsibilities across multiple organizations. So it's been very different from each other.
Mm-hmm.
I started off as a consultant in the healthcare domain.
Hmm.
Then I moved to education. Then I worked in private equity.
Hmm.
I dabbled my hand at macroeconomics. I
Mhm.
taught at
Yeah.
Jamia Millia and DU.
Oh.
And then I worked with IPAC,
Mhm.
managing the communications on
Mhm.
two campaigns primarily. One was the campaign for Jagan Mohan Reddy in Andhra
Mhm.
Pradesh, and the other was, which is still ongoing,
Right.
for Mamata Banerjee in West Bengal.
Okay. How was working in Andhra?
It was actually quite good.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem I had initially was with the language,
Mm-hmm.
but then the thing about IPAC is that they hire a lot of local talent.
Right.
So on any campaign, around 80 to 90% of the people are people who speak the native language of the state
Okay.
where we are working in.
Hmm.
So the other 10 to 20% people are people who have worked on previous campaign or bring in some specific skill sets,
Hmm.
which when combined with the native population of that state actually helps to deliver a good
Hmm.
impact on the campaign.
So, did you work on the campaign from the start, or did you join beach mein kahin?
So I joined to lead a national campaign which IPAC was planning to start for one of the two national parties,
Okay.
but that didn't materialize. So after which I started working on the Andhra campaign almost towards the end of it. So I was on the campaign only for the last 6 to 8 months.
Okay. But it was quite a story, Jagan's story, right? Because there was 2 consecutive terms that Naidu had won.
Yeah. So the biggest thing with that is Naidu has developed this persona that presents him as a much bigger leader than he actually is.
Okay.
So even in the elections that we see before the one in which Jagan won,
Right.
the difference was not that much. It was
Okay.
only about that final push,
Hmm.
making sure that the campaign stays on track and just making sure that you delivered till the last day
Right.
to make sure that the campaign is a success.
Hmm.
That is one thing where IPAC actually helped the party a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't restructuring their entire organization and probably helping them get across the line this time.
Okay. It used to be said about Naidu that he's quite proficient with technology, campaigning वगैरह में अच्छा है, team है.
To be very honest, when we worked there, we didn't find him that great. So
Okay.
it was mostly the hype, which I had also heard before
Hmm.
I actually learned that much about the state and the
Yeah.
politics there. As a person who was sitting in Delhi and following him on Delhi media, it seemed
Hmm.
like Naidu is this great guy who knows how to manage booths, who knows how to use
Yeah.
technology, and it's very difficult to beat him.
Yeah.
But my personal experience was that
Hmm.
not many people in Andhra Pradesh actually liked the guy.
अच्छा.
So he
That's
used
new.
to win, but that was more because of how he managed things rather
Right.
than how good a leader people thought he was.
Hmm.
And even in 2014 when he won,
Mm-hmm.
that was largely because it was a new state
Hmm.
and people thought that since he was an experienced hand,
Right.
he would probably be in a better place to lead the state
Mhm.
at that point of time.
Yeah, I think because he's had that image for a while. I remember in early 2000s also people used to be like, oh, Naidu is like the modern chief minister, ITCT and all.
Yeah, so even in this campaign, if you look at it, so towards the last 6 months,
Mhm.
Jagan started boxing Naidu and TDP a lot.
Okay.
And they didn't really have too many avenues open to give a plank to their campaign, for
Okay.
lack of a better word. And then also Naidu fell back to the same policy wherein he was trying to build a national coalition with other parties
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
Congress and trying to show that he's the one who knows how to run things in Delhi.
Right.
And that experience would be very handy for the people of Andhra Pradesh.
Right. Yeah.
So his entire campaign was around trying to position himself as a bigger national leader than Jagan.
Hmm.
But then the people actually wanted someone to lead the state.
Exactly.
And they were not really voting for
Yeah.
a PM candidate.
Also, I think this time, like earlier, it would have worked, like when he was aligning with NDA, right? But this time,
Probably.
people showed little confidence in Congress. and he was aligning with them.
So there was one more thing that people in Andhra actually liked YSR a lot.
Okay.
They still love him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You see the respect, the love that he has. People still have his portraits in their homes.
Oh, okay.
And so Jagan's time was to come. It was a question of when and not if.
Right.
So people wanted to give Jagan a chance to lead them.
Okay.
So again, and if you look at the margin of the victory, I don't remember the last time when Andhra Pradesh had that big of a margin in terms of victory. Not just the seats, but also the vote share.
Vote share. How much was the difference in vote share? I know seats were like quite.
It was in double digits, and in a two-party contest, that's a landslide, as evident from the seats.
Yes.
So YSRCP won over 150 seats.
Okay.
In the 175 house.
Yeah. Wow, that is like more than a landslide, like complete wipe out.
So Jagan actually joked about this as well.
Okay.
So after the previous election, TDP had poached around 22, 23 MLAs from YSRCP.
This is in 2014.
2014,
okay.
After 2014.
Okay.
And this time, those were the number of MLAs they were left
They
with.
already had. So if he poaches them now, they have zero.
They have zero. But again, there's no need for anyone to poach.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So how did it all start? Like what was the main things that you guys worked, like IPAC was working on with Jagan?
So what IPAC does very well is it gives structure to the campaign. It makes sure that the messaging is on point.
Mm-hmm.
So for any leader, not just Jagan, for any leader, there would be a lot of things that people think about that leader or that party when you first take the name.
Right.
In the end, what you want is to highlight 3 or 4 things that are that actually define that person or the party, and things that actually connect with the voters. And you want to cancel out all the noise around it. So that's where IPAC helps in cementing in the narrative and making sure that the narrative reaches as many people as possible. Now, when you think of this, most people would think of using mass media or social media to do it, but that's a very small part of what IPAC does. The biggest strength that IPAC brings to the table is that it has a very large field team. We have a core team member from IPAC in almost every assembly constituency.
Okay.
And then there are other people who are hired in for the campaign who are not full-time employees of IPAC, but could be part-time, could be contracted, and on various other things. So what these people actually do is that whenever we design a campaign, one thing that we really try to do is reach out to as many people as we can directly.
Okay.
So it's basically knocking your door and informing you about something that the party or the leader is doing. If you go out and reach to people and during the entire run of the campaign you reach the same house 3 to 4 to 5 times, that definitely has an impact on how they perceive that particular politician or party. If nothing else, it gives them a feeling that okay, this guy, this party feels like I am that important, that they have to reach out to me these many times. They're not taking me for granted.
Yeah.
And it also helps to directly deliver the message to them. So a lot of times what we use are collaterals. So it could be a table calendar.
Okay.
A table calendar with the calendar on one part and say the 9 promises that Jagan made Navratnalu on the other side. So it's a sleek table calendar which looks good. You would want to keep it in your house.
Right.
And when we are reaching out to the people and telling them, informing them about what Navratnalus are, they also have something to keep, and they will actually be seeing it for many more days to come in their homes.
Right. So it's a constant recall.
Yes.
Okay.
It kind of drives the point in that this is what the leader of the party is promising. This is what they are saying they'll do. And they actually care enough to reach out to you multiple times with everything that they are trying to say. So
I'm pretty sure like almost all political parties have some sort of grassroots presence, right? Booth level workers and all.
I don't think all parties have that. Some parties do.
Right.
So, for example, BJP is very strong with that.
Of course.
a lot of other parties, regional parties are as well.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, what they actually lack in is that
Mm-hmm.
they never have a coordinated effort.
Right.
BJP to some extent does,
Mm-hmm.
but most other parties, I have not really experienced a coordinated effort from them where within a period of 7 to 10 days,
Mm.
a party tries to reach all households in a particular state with the
Mm.
same message.
Okay. So nothing is in sync.
Yes. So
Okay.
basically, this way, if I try to reach almost every household in a state
Mm-hmm.
in a period of 2 weeks, then it's not just the fact that I have told it to the person I've reached out to,
Mm-hmm.
but then when the two people who already know each other in their social circles
Right.
meet, they have something to talk about, which is this.
Exactly.
This is the new common thing that has happened
Yeah.
in their life.
Hmm. So you feel this is something parties are not able to do it themselves, like,
They are
like especially
generally
the
not.
coordination.
They're generally not. So it's largely because not every party has a structure
Hmm.
which has a clear chain of command.
Okay.
You have the basic structure in place where you have a person who is a mandal in charge, then there's a zilla in
Hmm.
charge, and so on. But then again, you hardly see two zilla in charges coordinating
Right.
with each other,
Right.
except
Hmm.
for maybe the final stretch of the campaign.
Hmm.
But you don't see that like 1 year before the campaign.
Hmm. So you think that will be a problem of the party that they, so for example, if you're talking about a scene of 1 year before the campaign, so for Zilla in charges or like downward, like
Yeah.
booth in charges, to not have a common message, do you think there is something that parties lack in sort of message creation?
Yes, so parties do lack in that,
Mhm.
and to be fair to them, most of them are trying to improve on that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
At least what I've seen in the past 5 years or so,
Mhm.
that every party is trying to do that.
Okay.
But what IPAC does is that the IPAC team can reach out to any state, and
Mhm.
within a couple of months,
Mm-hmm.
they can set up the infrastructure where doing that becomes very easy.
Right.
And actually taking up most of the bureaucratic burden of it,
Mm-hmm.
wherein two people
Mhm.
don't have to coordinate among each other. They'll
Right.
just get a set of instructions or a set of guidelines to follow,
Mm-hmm.
which would
Okay.
obviously be approved by the head of the party and
Right.
whoever the chief minister or the prime minister or
Mhm.
whoever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So what that helps is that the party in itself doesn't have to change a lot in the way they function.
Mm-hmm.
They can still function as independent units. It's just
Right.
that someone else would be taking care of making sure that the effort feels concerted.
Okay. So the IPAC structure doesn't interfere with the party structure.
It doesn't.
Okay. So it works in parallel to it.
It works in parallel to it.
Okay.
It actually helps it
Hmm.
reach its full potential.
Right. So does it create conflict with party people?
Generally not, because again, if you look at IPAC, we go and work for a leader.
Right.
We generally have very good relationships with whoever the
Mhm.
leader of the party is.
Right.
We have their full confidence. So once say a Jagan or a Mamata Banerjee
Right.
tells something to their party cadre,
Mm-hmm.
they generally follow through.
Okay. Yeah.
You won't have a problem of people not doing what
Right.
Jagan or Mamata Banerjee
Right.
are telling them.
Yeah. Especially in parties like Jagan's or Mamata Banerjee's.
And to be very honest, those kind of parties are becoming the norm,
Right.
wherein the leader has a much stronger grasp on the party.
Right.
Unlike, say, someone like Congress, where the grass is not there, and we are all seeing how that is becoming an impediment for them to navigate
Right.
through these times.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So I think almost all parties, except for the Congress, maybe or the CPI.
There could be a couple more, but
yeah,
almost
like
all
among major
all
parties.
major parties.
There is one head.
There's one head and a clear head
Right.
who is the indisputable leader of the party.
Right. And his voice is the command for everybody.
And to be very honest, if you're running a major campaign
Mhm.
which is like complex and long,
Right.
you actually need that one person
Exactly.
to carry the mantle for you.
Right. And that is the problem we see Congress doesn't have. Like
Sure.
they don't seem to have a clear message or the messengers. Like who will carry their message to the polling booth.
I mean, exactly. Even if you look at their stand on the recent issues, they are
Mhm.
not really sure if they want to come across as a knocked off version of BJP, or
Yeah.
they actually have an ideology of their own,
Yeah.
or or if not, then actually if they don't care about an issue or the issue is not important, they can't
Yeah.
even let it go.
Yeah.
So they're not doing any of these three
Yeah.
things.
I think, and it's funny to see that because till like the 80s, Congress used to have the central message. Like they
Yes.
used to have the, not just political, but the national, whatever was being discussed in the national, movies or
Yeah. songs.
We used to have Lata Mangeshkar sing for the China war, right?
Yeah.
So the whole patriotic nationalistic sentiment used to be very Congress driven, or
Yeah.
whatever the party was doing, or whatever the head of the party was doing, be it Nehru or Indira Gandhi. But as soon as they've sort of had in the past, let's say 10, 12 years, especially that we're seeing, we didn't know in the 90s because all parties were sort of in disarray. So we see that as soon as there is a lack of central authority who sort of wants to voice a message, we also see the messengers get confused.
Yeah, so the problem with them was that they put all the eggs in the Gandhi basket, and the only thing that the opposition or the BJP or anyone had to do was discredit the Gandhis.
Right.
Indira Gandhi had already weakened the regional leaders
Yeah.
to an extent that they cannot probably win on their own. I cannot think of many Congress leaders except maybe Ashok Gehlot or probably
Yeah.
a few more people who can win even state elections on their
Yeah.
own. And since the Gandhi family has been largely discredited by the BJP, RSS, they don't really have a plan B.
Yeah.
And developing regional leadership is not that easy,
Hmm.
especially because the moment a regional leader becomes big,
Hmm.
why would they want to be? Why would they want to remain under a
Yeah.
weak leadership in Delhi?
Yeah. The thing with the Congress is that they don't, in the last many years or like couple of decades at least, they don't seem to have a very cohesive, neither a messenger or like a central command that gives what the main message of the party is, nor do they have messengers at the booth level, like who will carry the message forward.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that nobody really knows what Congress wants.
True. So,
Right.
with regard to Congress, the problem is that in the last 20 years, the only time they probably had a decent messenger and some message on point was when Sonia Gandhi tried to handle the campaign before the 2004 elections.
Hmm.
It was not great, but it was still much better than what it is right now.
Okay. How so?
So what she did was she did a lot of road shows,
Hmm.
which didn't seem that big at the time when she was doing it.
Hmm.
But that definitely was evident from the results of the 2004 elections. What Congress had in 2004 and what they don't have right now is one big thing that I can think of is 42 seats in Andhra Pradesh.
Yeah.
42 seats where they were like very dominant,
Yeah.
and today probably they cannot even win 10
Yeah.
no matter what they do. And that's their own doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, I'm not sure which are the states where Congress will win seats. Even if we try to chart out recovery for Congress,
Hmm.
I don't think there are enough seats left for Congress right now
Yeah.
where they can win to become the single largest party in the parliament.
Yeah. I think even in states where I think there are only a handful of states where it is only just BJP and Congress.
And in those states also, it's something that this is a big opportunity for a third player to actually come in at this point of time because Congress
Exactly.
is that weak.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's since independence, or like at least since the 70s, we are seeing that in every state, Congress is being replaced by
Yes.
either a regional party or BJP. Like more recently, we see in Odisha, Congress used to be the number 2 party with like
Yeah.
30% vote share. They never made a threat to the BJD for let's say 20 years. But now what's happened is BJP has completely taken over that. Their vote share is around 30, I think, or 35%.
True.
And they've completely replaced the Congress. Same thing happened in Tripura, where CPI and Congress used to be the thing, and
Yeah.
BJP replaced them.
True.
And if you go back a couple of decades, it was regional parties who were replacing Congress, whether it is in UP, maybe Maharashtra, even like Andhra in the last
So
decade.
any state which had a sizable population of a single dominant OBC group, we have seen a regional party come up. The only reason there is not a party in Madhya Pradesh, say a state like Madhya Pradesh, is
Right.
because there is no single dominant OBC group.
Hmm.
The OBC votes are very fragmented.
Okay.
So that's one reason why Congress has managed to stay the second party, and nobody else has dethroned them. But I'm not sure how long that would continue to be the case. Because sooner or later, someone would stitch a coalition between a couple of OBC groups and probably come up with something.
So OBCs currently in Madhya Pradesh are mostly with Congress?
No, they're not mostly with Congress, but then again, the fact that no single OBC group is has a lead in double digits over the other OBC groups. For example, if you look at in UP, Yadavs are very dominant.
Right.
Similarly in Bihar, Yadavs are probably the most dominant OBC group. So since you have one group which is that dominant, it is easy for a leader from that community to come up and establish a party of their own.
Right.
But if it is a lot more fragmented and none of them are actually in double digits in terms of percentages, it becomes difficult to have one leader who can be a threat to the two national parties.
Yeah.
So the vote generally gets fragmented and it gets divided on community lines, but again, it's very fragmented in the way it does.
Yeah, I think we see this phenomenon in Rajasthan also, that every few years there is some OBC group which is trying to come up. And
none of them is dominant enough to really clear that barrier and become a permanent mainstay.
Correct.
Or probably bring a few more with them.
So they get sort of, they either join BJP or end up joining BJP or Congress, either side.
So even if you look at the Muslim population in these two states, Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, it's not as big as UP or Bihar.
Yeah.
So if you combine Muslims and Yadavs,
right,
it became a big force for both those states right through the 90s and the early 2000s.
Right. Yeah. So in these states, so that is the states where BJP and Congress are left to fight each other, and Congress is really struggling.
And that fragmentation is the only reason why Congress still is a player in those states. I believe.
Comes down to sociology.
Yeah.
But
too much fragmentation.
Fragmentation. But it does also raise a interesting point of whether what is the best model going forward for a political party, especially in the Indian context, because we are seeing parties with a head, one individual heading it rather than a parliamentary committee or a party committee heading it. They seem to be doing better than parties which have too many people.
I mean, true, but the problem with that is also that you are putting all your eggs in one basket.
True.
It seems to be working now because most people have just picked it up in the recent times, and you still have the first generation or second generation leaders leading it.
Right.
But what happens in the third or the fourth generation?
Right.
I'm not really sure that this is a long-term strategy, a long-term play. Again, I could be biased to this, but I actually believe that the best way for a political party to remain relevant for a long time is to actually define what it stands for very clearly and stand with it even when it's not, it doesn't seem like the politically prudent thing to do.
What do you mean?
It could be that you probably stand for a particular issue, like we see in US politics.
Right.
A person like Bernie Sanders stands for Medicare for all.
Right.
He stood for Medicare for all when 10% of the people wanted it.
Yeah.
To a time when 70% of the people wanted
it.
Right. At least in the Democratic voters.
Yeah.
So you stay on the thing that you believe in. You keep your message consistent, and people will come around.
Right.
That's one way. Again, it's not a short-term play, which is probably why most people don't do it. It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
And it requires you to actually sacrifice a lot through your political journey.
But I think it's easier to do it there because Bernie Sanders doesn't have to take care of a party. He just has to take care of his seat, winnability.
True.
But he has to, so his role is basically winning his seat plus a narrative, right? But here what happens is, if we talk about either a national player or a regional party, they also have to win the whole state.
True.
Plus create a narrative. So I think it gets a little harder for them to go by issues.
I think it's not that difficult, especially if you talk about states. I can understand your point nationally.
Right.
In terms of state, if you look at the two Dravidian parties up until Jayalalitha died,
right,
they have been pretty much on point with what they believe in and how they're going to go about it.
Right.
And that has not really changed in the last 3, 4, 5 decades. And they have continuously kept doing it. And the thing is that the two parties actually agree on a lot of issues, and they have not thought about changing their stance on that issue just because the other party has the same
Right.
bent of mind.
Right. So nobody wants to take that risk.
Exactly. So I think Tamil Nadu is a very good example for us to look at. If that how a political party can go about defining who they are, what they stand for, and how they plan to achieve it.
Okay.
That is something that a lot of other regional parties can pick from the DMK.
But the thing with again that type of system is now that Jayalalitha is dead, there is a question of who will succeed her, right? So whether we will even see AIDMK that relevant in Tamil Nadu, or will we see it disappear gradually?
But then again, the politics of Tamil Nadu is slightly more charged up in the way that people are more aware of the day-to-day issues. People are more aware of the politics happening around them, how the policies are shaping their lives. I'm not saying that they are that great in it, but they're much better than most other states.
Okay.
They understand the politics better.
Yeah.
So if the AIDMK actually starts to do things which are not liked by the people, the AIDMK will actually wither away. At least that's my hypothesis, and we can probably see it.
But you're saying that even without a huge leader for now, it can continue to exist as a major party by like
for a few more years, but I don't see AIDMK being a long-term player unless they do something drastic.
And by that you mean unless they have a new leader?
Unless they have a new leader, unless the fact that they win back the confidence of the people, because right now a lot of people in Tamil Nadu believe that AIDMK is basically a slave of the BJP. And they don't really, they're not really standing for the people of Tamil Nadu the way Amma used to.
Right. Okay.
Which is why I, to be very honest, I think that DMK should have a very easy election this time around. I don't see DMK losing this election.
Yeah, even in Lok Sabha they did quite well.
I'm pretty sure that they're going to like sweep the Legislative Assembly as well.
Okay. So did you see that in Jagan's campaign, like Jagan going behind some issues or like?
Yes. So the thing with Jagan is that based on what I could sense and what I could gather is that he is a leader who actually wanted to differentiate himself from Chandrababu Naidu in the way that Chandrababu Naidu brands himself as an administrator.
Right.
And Jagan wanted to brand himself or like convey the message to the people that he is a provider on lines of what YSR was. He will take care of the people. He is not there to manage the state or administer the state. There's an entire bureaucracy to do that.
Right.
The thing for a leader is to actually take care of each and every people in the state, even if they're economically or socio-politically weaker.
So he's more a nurturer rather than...
Yes, and that was very evident from the fact that the 9 major promises that he came up with, the Navratnalus, they're all social schemes.
Okay.
Which are basically a lot of public spending to improve the livelihoods of the people.
Okay.
Through education, through direct food transfer or other things, other subsidies. So basically, he defined his campaign, he defined his approach very early in the election cycle for the people to see and get a clear difference or a clear contrast between him and Naidu.
Okay. And did you find that it was really working, that people bought into the idea of welfare schemes? Yes.
So the thing is that in a country like India, welfare schemes are actually not something that you can. It's not something to just discuss and think, okay, it's a good to have. For at least half of the population, some welfare scheme in some way or means is actually very necessary.
Right.
I don't think that there is an option of not implementing those schemes. For example, BJP might hate NREGA like as much as they want, but they still have to implement NREGA because NREGA fulfills a very important gap, especially in the way the rural economy works. Because if you look at it, a lot of labor in the rural areas, they don't really have an option of doing anything other than the thing that they are currently doing,
Right.
and which results in a lot of stressed employment where they are working for the sake of working because they don't have any other option to do. If a farm laborer is working in a farm and the crops get destroyed, they don't really have a backup option. But 120, 140, 150 days of Narega actually gives them an option to not starve, if nothing else.
Yeah, 100 days of work is a lot of
So
money for them.
it gives you a backup option. It also helps a lot of women get out of the workforce,
Yeah,
wherein they were in the workforce just because they needed the money.
correct.
So and also it revigorated the entire rural economy. It increased the purchasing power,
Correct.
and that is what we saw during the 10 years of the UPA.
Yeah, it's sort of a cash transfer, right?
Yeah.
For 100 days basically, and what it does is put money directly at the bottom of the pyramid, so it will come back to the market. Like
Yes.
when people are poor,
When people have more money, they'll spend more.
yeah, and also when people are at the poorer end of the spectrum, they don't have an option but to spend it, because for us we can save some money, plan for the
Yeah.
future, but for a lot of people it's a question of everyday spending, so that money will come back to the market.
Yeah, so because most of these people are not spending money because they don't have it. It's not like
Exactly.
It's not nothing else. It's just that they don't have it to spend on some very basic things.
Yeah. So when you go to a state, or when let's say somebody like IPAC goes to a state and is doing or like trying to find out what works, how do you find out what welfare schemes would work?
So basically, what you do is you do a very extensive research, which includes test research to begin with, as to how the state is doing, what the per capita income is, where is most of the state employed, how rich are the people in a particular region, how poor they are, what are basically which regions in a state have more amenities, which have less, what are the amenities that are missing, and then you go out and talk to people. So you let the people help you set your agenda. So if it is coming from them, it's more likely to click with more people,
Right.
than something that is devised by 10 people sitting in a room.
Of course.
So that's a very important thing. Whenever IPAC goes to a state, it listens to people in terms of what they want. Once you've identified that, you crystallize it, and then you try to come up with the top issues that are most important for people across the state, across the regions, and then you try to create a list of these are the 7 or these are the 9 or these are 10 most important things that this state needs in the next 5 years.
So it comes from the people, from the ground.
It comes from the people. So we actually, the thing is that you build a hypothesis
Right.
through desk research, then you go out, talk to people and test the hypothesis.
So it's a very scientific process.
In a way.
Yeah. So do you also like when you are like, not obviously this is all before winning the election or before the voting is done, whenever you're going, or whenever whoever is that person who's going on the field planning all the research for the let's say the manifesto, that whatever will be promised, do they also collate with state finances and public spending, or like
Yes, we do. So
what the budget is
basically
available?
when we are doing the desk research, we try to identify the areas where the funds have not gone previously.
Okay.
And is there a reason why they have not gone, or is it just because that particular aspect was neglected? And if it was neglected, do people actually want someone to pay more attention to it? So you look at it that way, and if something meets all those criteria, it finally comes on in the shortlist.
Okay. And does the process remain the same whether you are the opposition at the time of election or the party, or the governing party, like in Bengal?
It's more or less the same.
Okay.
If you look at it, it's more or less the same.
Okay.
The only difference is that as a challenger, the campaign can be more vitriolic. Like
Right.
it can have more zing to it.
Right.
As a person in power, you are generally more
humble and
humble. You try to be humble in both the cases,
Right.
but you are more subdued. in the way that you don't have that tone of messaging
Right.
wherein you don't attack that much.
Yeah. So you think, so for example, let's take the case of Mamata Banerjee in Bengal. There has been a very high noise, like very vitriolic campaign by the BJP, and they have actually made good grounds in the state. So do you think, to put it very crudely, what are her chances of retaining the state?
I personally think that the chances are good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see her losing.
Okay.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't see her losing largely because the Trinamool vote has not scattered.
Okay.
It's mostly that the other votes have gone to the single pole of that BJP now is.
Right.
And if the Congress and the left put up a decent fight in their own rights, in their own
Mhm.
regards, the chances of the BJP vote from the last Lok Sabha election splitting are higher than aggregating more votes.
Oh, so you're saying that they may not be able to get more votes than they got in 2019?
I think so. The chances are that they would lose
Mhm.
some votes here. And it actually depends a lot on how the Congress and the left approach the election.
Right.
Because last time what we saw was that most of the votes that went to left
Mm-hmm.
actually went to BJP.
Hmm.
Which to many people would not make a lot of sense. That
Yeah.
how could the communists vote for the RSS?
Right. Right.
But then that's largely because that's how the politics shaped in the last 5 years before that election.
Mm-hmm.
That BJP managed to become the pole and make the other parties irrelevant.
Right.
Most people thought that voting for the other parties is basically just throwing your vote
Right.
away.
Right.
So they thought BJP is the only other option that they have.
Yeah. So it also sort of suggests that ideology may be a little overrated, like less important than we think.
Yes, I
At the
don't-
ground level, at least.
Yes, I don't think ideology is that important for people who have daily struggles in their life.
Hmm.
So for someone like you and me, probably
Yeah.
because we never have to think about where we will get our next meal.
Yeah.
We have time to actually think about it in terms of ideology and shape it that way.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't,
Yeah.
and that's very evident in a lot of states where you see that a challenger party which comes in
Mm-hmm.
defeats the ruling party which has been there for 20 years or 25 years,
Right.
and overnight you see that the flags that are in front of all the shops change.
Yeah. Yeah. So people just want to be with whoever is in power.
Whoever's in power.
Right. And we're saying the same thing in the US also, right? Like a lot of people who like Trump never attacks Bernie Sanders, for example. So a lot of people who sort of voted for Trump out of, let's say, despise for the establishment, they are also fine with Bernie Sanders policies, although they are like at the polar end of the like political spectrum.
I mean, yes. So if you look at that, so the working class white American
Right.
basically thinks that their jobs are going.
Hmm.
And in most elections, while they might be thinking of other things, the most important point for them is to make sure that there are jobs in their communities.
Hmm.
Anyone who talks about jobs,
Right.
I honestly believe that if Hitler came in the US right now in the Midwest
Hmm.
and promised them that every working person, everyone who wants to work will get a job,
Hmm.
I don't think that his campaign would be would not be a force to reckon with even today, because that's the most important thing for most people,
Yeah.
and everything else becomes secondary
Hmm.
if they don't have that job.
Hmm.
With Trump, the fact is that Trump is someone who looks at the world in an insular way. He
Hmm.
wants to make US more insular,
Right.
and that is one place where he agrees with Bernie Sanders,
Hmm.
that Bernie Sanders also wants to make America more insular than it is right
Mhm.
now.
Although they come from a different context. Like Trump is like, why do we want to waste money on other things? Bernie Sanders is like, we need to make it stronger internally, so we
Yes.
need to focus there. But for people, it appeals, like both sides appeal equally, because Trump is saying, I'm going to give, like, get jobs back to you. Bernie Sanders is saying not only that, but we need to take care of you with Medicare and other things also.
So with Bernie Sanders, what works is, for any other leader, this point of making America more insular would probably have been a problem, a bigger problem than it is for Bernie Sanders, for anyone on the left. The reason why it is not for Bernie Sanders is because a lot of people who actually support Bernie Sanders think that the more that America is involved in the world order, the more it disturbs it.
Yeah,
so it might actually be a good thing for America to become a little insular for
Right.
at least some time.
Right. I mean, they have a point there actually. Like the whole Middle East crisis, like starting with Iran,
Exactly.
used to be the most peaceful place.
So if the voters who support Bernie Sanders
Right.
didn't think of this along with other things, then that stance of Bernie Sanders making US more insular could have been a major problem. But because those voters believe this as well,
Yeah.
that is not as big a problem as most people would have thought it would be.
So it's a very, in a way, people who are supporting Bernie Sanders, they are actually taking a liberal stand in the true sense of the word. Like,
Yes.
like early liberals, they were like, let the individual be, why interfere in other one's life.
I mean, so if you look at the people who are behind Bernie Sanders, and when I talk about it, the people who are being painted as like far left, even by the Biden campaign,
Right.
these people are there because this is how their life has shaped up and like brought them to a place where these are the things that they believe in. And I personally believe that for a lot of them, Bernie Sanders is just a person carrying this message for now. And it's not really Bernie Sanders they are voting for, it's the platform that he has put forward that they are voting for. I personally don't think that Bernie Sanders is as big a cult, or like even half the cult that Donald Trump is for the right.
Right. I think Bernie Sanders' support has to do a lot with his issues, like what he stands for. If tomorrow he starts saying rubbish things, I don't think
people will stand for him, because the moment he started cozying up with the Biden campaign, because let's be fair to the guy, he has to, because he wants to defeat Trump. So he has to work with Biden. A lot of the people didn't like what he said. While sharing the stage with Biden. And they made sure that Bernie Sanders heard what they had to say. In the tone that they wanted to say.
Also, I think a lot of interest dissipated. Like, if you see Bernie Sanders' social media right now, I mean, it could also be that he's out of the nomination contention. But a lot of everyday interest that was coming into his, like, the energy, it sort of went away.
That's also because ever since he suspended his campaign, his campaign and the core staff that he had have been helping the down ballot Democrats, the progressives,
the grassroots,
to primary the sort of Democrats who prevented him from becoming the nominee.
Right. So they're winning in those states now.
Yes.
Like,
so
I think 7 or 8 of them have won.
If you look at Texas,
right,
a lot of progressives who have been promoted by Bernie Sanders have won. If you look at New York, a lot of veteran politicians have been primaried by people who Bernie Sanders supports. If you look at West Virginia, there is Paula Swearengin, who is now the candidate for the Senate. Then we had Tucker in Kentucky.
He won, right?
And he lost by a whisker.
Why? Oh.
And Amy McGrath actually outspent him like 12-1.
Like, all of his candidates are poor candidates. Like Cory Bush.
They are poor candidates. Jamal Brown.
Exactly.
Cory Bush. So and actually more important than these, one election where Bernie Sanders actually showed what he can do is the candidate for the Seattle local council, wherein his campaign actually helped the local candidate Shama, I don't remember her full name, win when her opponent were being sponsored by the Amazon.
Wow. So he took on the Amazon.
He took on the Amazon and won.
In their backyard.
And this was while his campaign was still active. So I'm not sure why this didn't roll on.
And this is
And
like
became a
Amazon is
thing.
also based out of Seattle, right?
Amazon is
So
based
he defeated them in their backyard. So no wonder like Jeff Bezos, like big money is against him.
and
Like they know that he can actually go and win.
I mean the day Biden won the most of the states on
Yeah.
Super Tuesday,
Yeah.
the stock prices of all the health insurance
Yeah.
players went up.
Yeah.
That tells you that who's their guy and who's not.
Exactly. Yeah, he's like backed by big banks, big health, like healthcare, private healthcare, big tech.
I
also.
think the only place where Biden has a better record than Sanders is
Mhm.
on the gun issue.
Yeah.
That's the only place where Biden is slightly better. And
Right.
that's largely because,
But off late, not to begin with.
no, actually to begin with,
Really?
Bernie Sanders has changed his stance on guns in the last decade or so.
Yeah.
So, and that's also because he's from Vermont and
Yeah. It's not really an
hunting
issue.
is really a part of life.
And also homicides are not really an issue in Vermont.
They're not issue, but also the fact that people actually use
Yeah.
guns for hunting
It's a
and
forest state.
that's a part of their life.
Right,
So
right.
he probably didn't see them as that big a problem at that
Exactly.
point of time, especially in the context of his state,
Right.
which is why he was never very vocal against them.
Yeah. The same thing that was alleged against him about minorities, right? Especially black minorities.
I mean, I don't think that had any leg to stand on.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
accusation
But
in
people
any-
were like, "Oh, he's not pro-blacks as much as he should be." But the thing was that it never came up because Vermont is predominantly a white state, so it was never an
and
issue.
he's the only presidential candidate that I can think of who went to jail
Hmm.
for standing up against segregation.
Exactly, with Martin Luther King, like the original.
Well, at the same time, probably
Yeah.
not together, but at the same
At
time.
the same time, yeah,
So
he is that old.
he's that old, and he went to jail like 50 years back for this.
Yeah, and he's so consistent. Like he was sort of espousing policies that people are finding relevant today.
And the thing is that a lot of people would criticize him for not winning in the end,
Hmm.
because a lot of success is determined by the outcome
Right.
and not really the other changes that come about.
Hmm.
So the thing with Bernie Sanders is he does what he believes in, and
Yeah.
he doesn't do what he doesn't believe in.
Hmm.
So if he thinks that the education programs in Cuba were good,
Hmm.
he would talk about it and not
Yeah.
back down even if it cost him Florida.
Yeah.
If he thinks that ex-convicts should be rehabilitated back in life once they have served their time,
Hmm.
then he would go ahead and actually prove it through his actions, as was evident from the fact that he hired Chuck Rocha
Yeah.
to lead his Latino outreach.
Right. And he was an ex-convict.
And he was on probation for 2 years.
Yeah.
So he and everybody would make sure that they don't touch Chuck Rocha with a barge pole, like from 10 feet away.
Yeah.
And Chuck Rocha gave him the big win that he got in Nevada,
Right.
which was the reason why
The
the entire
Hispanic community.
Democratic establishment got together and
Yeah.
the bloody Monday happened before
Yeah.
Super Tuesday.
Exactly. And this also tells you that he's quite smart, actually, Bernie Sanders.
He
So
is,
what-
he is.
So there are two things very fascinating about that person. One is that he's very, very committed to the cause, what he believes in. Like, even if it doesn't lead to a position of authority like the president, even if that doesn't happen, he's committed to the cause and he's working for the same issue on the ground in the states. And the second is that he's a very, very good organizer. Like, he gets the job done.
He
Like,
is.
you can defeat Amazon backed guy in Seattle and in Texas.
To be very honest, he has created a second strung leadership.
Exactly.
At least 2 or 3 of them, in my mind, are potential presidents for the United
Yeah.
States of America down the line.
Absolutely.
We can talk about AOC.
Yeah.
She definitely is one of them.
Yeah.
Nina Turner.
Right. Even Cory Bush, like,
Cory Bush
She
still
may
has
not
a,
be that
still has a long
articulate
way
or-
to go. Like
Yeah,
she
yeah.
still has to prove herself.
but she has that energy, right? And she's coming from the south,
Yeah.
so.
Not exactly south, but close sort of.
But it's a
North Carolina. matlab,
yeah, but it was a Republican state
हाँ,
for the longest. Not
it's a
exactly
slightly
the south.
Republican
Yeah.
state, yes.
So that is what his fantastic contribution to politics is. Like,
Exactly.
and I mean, it's a pity that we will see like two candidates go against each other, like neither of whom can speak in complete sentences. Like Joe Biden and Trump, they're like pathetic to watch, both of them.
But then again, I still like if you talk to me in terms of how I see it politically,
Mm-hmm.
I would want Biden to lose so that the left becomes stronger. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But I don't think I can reconcile with the fact that Trump would win.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
in the end, if I was a voter in the US, I would go out and vote for Biden.
Yeah.
But I would have a very hard time doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's if it was anyone else but Trump, like even if it was like George Bush, like the son, like the junior, you would still be like, okay, let this guy win.
Yeah, and we can see that the rehabilitation process of George Bush Jr. that's going on right now. Like,
Yeah.
and that's possible only because people think that Trump is way worse.
Yeah, exactly. Now suddenly even for Democrat, George Bush is a decent guy.
Yeah, and like I read an article a couple of days back wherein he has created 43 portraits of immigrants, George Bush Jr. and he's going to like put them out in front of the world. And most of the people might not remember that he's the one who created ICE.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So
That's a weird fantasy to have. To first
Yeah.
create like immigrant prisoners and then paint them.
yes, and that is one thing that a lot of people in India, when they criticize the Indian media, they
Right.
try to compare it with the US media and
Mhm.
try to show how it is much better. But even US media is like whitewashing the legacy
Yeah, yeah,
of a war criminal.
exactly. And like the less we speak about Dick Cheney, the better.
Dick Cheney, or even if you look at MSNBC and the way that they covered the presidential primary
Yeah,
for the Democratic Party,
yeah. I mean, they're hands in glove with the mainstream.
that was as bad as any TV channel that we can think of in India.
Yeah, I mean, there are issues that they just won't touch, and there are issues that there is a huge support for.
But they were actually dishonest in the way that they were. It was not that it's a bias or something.
Yeah.
They were actually dishonest.
And I think we've seen that in COVID also, the response to COVID.
Yeah.
This what's his
Cuomo.
name? Cuomo, right?
Like-
New York's governor.
Like he used to come on prime time CNN
Yeah.
and talk with his brother,
Exactly.
and his brother would build him up like
Yeah.
what a great guy.
That's like nepotism
And
101. And at the same time, his state was actually really having a hard time fighting the pandemic, but they were hailing him as a hero, which he was not.
Hmm.
And nobody brought up other states. Like Ohio did really well, like a couple of other states, but the mainstream media would never bring those things up. So yeah, the thing is that in
And
India,
he actually passed a bill to make sure that the hospitals cannot be sued
yeah, for turning patients away.
during a pandemic.
Exactly, for turning patients away.
For turning patients away.
So that's like actually criminal. Like it should be a war crime, pandemic crime. The only difference is though that in India, media is predominantly right wing now, like at least the TV media. But in the US, it's still quite balanced.
But in the US, the media is primarily pro-establishment and like pro-corporates, if you look
Yeah.
at it. So I'm not sure like that's way better than the media being entirely right-wing. Because you're
Yeah.
bound to a single issue bound to a single set of issues which are not going to help the common people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it translates in a similar way that people are stuck.
Yeah.
You talk about things which don't matter,
Hmm.
and the cycle goes on.
That is true. American election does look like like WWE. Like everything is propped up, and now this candidate, and now let's go right. Now let's go left. But they all have the same policies. Like Obama created the detention centers that Trump is putting people in. Everybody forgets it.
Yeah.
So a left-wing hero.
And Obama, to be very honest, like the way he's portrayed in media is also something that I cannot reconcile with.
Really? How so?
I don't really think very highly of Obama.
How so?
So he managed to fool people very well. Like
Mhm.
I've not seen any other politician in recent times who has managed to do that
Hmm.
with that efficacy. So he pretended to be one of the people
Yeah.
and then became one of the people he pretended to fight against.
Yeah.
And now he has a house on Martha Vineyard.
Where did that come from? How did he make so much money to have that house? Nobody knows.
Lectures, just like
Lectures.
Clinton did.
Yeah. So the president's salary is about $400,000, right? So for 8 years, it's like 3.2 million. And that house is about 12 million.
Would be 15
million.
at least.
And nobody questions it in the
Nobody
media.
questions
Where did this come
But
from?
then again, they have the thing on paper because they go and talk to Goldman Sachs and they get
Yeah.
paid $1 million for a speech.
But yeah, nobody asks that why is Goldman
so
Sachs
actually,
paying you
actually
so
in the
much?
2016 election, Bernie did bring this up during a debate
Yeah.
with Hillary Clinton,
Yeah.
wherein he was like, Madam Secretary got paid this much money for a speech. I'm sure we would all want to hear the speech since it must be a great speech since
Yeah.
she got that much money for
Exactly.
it.
And what is it that you are going to tell a bank that the bank already doesn't know? Or like the bank wants to hear from the president? Nobody knows.
I mean, even if you try to pass it off as as a life coach thing or something,
Yeah.
even that doesn't float.
Exactly. They're all bankers. They don't really need coaching. They're just after money anyway.
Yeah.
So what's the point? It's like very indirect form of corruption.
Yeah, it is.
Right. So, and plus,
I mean, as a kid, I could never reconcile the fact that lobbying is considered okay in US,
yeah.
and it's a thing like everyone knows, and lobbyists actually enter the Capitol building whenever they want to and talk to anyone when they
Yeah.
want to in front of everyone.
And they are the only people who can. Like no citizen can walk in and talk to anyone, but lobbyists can, right?
That never made sense to me as a kid. Like when I grew up, though, it always it
Yeah,
obviously
no,
became.
makes sense. Like big businesses behind you.
Yeah.
Like in the last, I think 6 years, the most, like the biggest lobby is from big tech. It used to be big oil, but it's big tech now, like big data.
Yeah.
So basically, data is the new oil that way as well.
Yeah.
So, but the other thing about Obama was that he also supported policies that were very, very against what he stood for publicly.
So
Detention centers was one.
So if you look at a lot of things that he did were entirely opposite of what he talked about in the campaign. That is one of the things that you mentioned. Then if you look at the Guantanamo Bay,
Right.
he
Never closed it.
He promised to close it in, I think, both of his campaigns.
Yeah.
And didn't do anything about
Yeah.
it. Then if you look at it, then he never really pushed any progressive policies per se. Like
Yeah.
if you look at the policies and don't look at the president behind them, I think Bill Clinton might come across as more progressive than Obama. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
I have a hunch that if you just look at the policies and don't tell anyone who the president behind those policies are,
Yeah.
Bill Clinton being what he was,
Yeah. In the 90s. Yeah.
was probably more progressive than him.
Yeah, he might turn out to be. Also, a lot of his policies look good on the face of it, but really did not, affect that issue that much. Like, for example, there were a lot of issues with the Obamacare that he got, like how
Yeah.
it was actually benefiting big pharma companies and big health insurance companies.
So I think what he was good at was coming up with a good name for a bill that he was going to do. Have 2 or 3 talking points about it, which would make it look like, oh, he has done something big. And at the end of it, it was just like probably dragging the thing another meter
Yeah.
in terms of the progress.
Yeah.
Not more than that.
Also, I've always hypothesized whether he was even that popular to begin with. Because when George Bush went out, he left 2 wars and a crashed economy, like an economy in recession. So no matter who came, would have won. Like it was a chance of the Democrats to win anyway.
True to an extent, but I also think that his 2008 campaign was very good. Like
The campaign was good,
in
definitely.
the way the campaign was run and the messaging and everything.
Yeah.
I think that was very good. So that did have a play. That did have a role in making him popular in a sense, or at least people having this expecting this from him.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is that whether people were actually behind him per se, or whether people were just disillusioned with how George Bush handled
Or the
everything.
Republicans did it. Which point? I think that point is fair, largely because if you look at the margins with which he won,
Yeah.
they were not great for both the elections.
For Mitt Romney, it was very, very slender, right?
They were not great.
Yeah.
Like even in 2008, when you are replacing George Bush
Right.
per se,
A disaster of a president.
as a president,
Right.
the margin didn't reflect that.
Yeah. And it was under Obama's presidentship that a lot of states went away from Democrats to Republicans. A lot of Senate seats.
Yes, but that's I think there are other factors in that as
Mhm.
well. So I think it would be unfair to just blame Obama for that.
Right.
But Obama
No, no, I'm not blaming.
didn't do
Yeah.
anything to help prevent
Exactly. So, what happened was when he came to power, just for the first time, also he attained a celebrity status very very soon, and then whole ecosystem around him was like, oh, he's a cool guy. He's a
it.
celebrity.
I think that also has to do a lot with racism. That
Yeah.
that
Exactly.
it was easier for a black Democrat to win the electoral college, but not
Yeah.
really to keep the Congress with the party
Hmm.
that he is in,
Yeah.
because it was easier for at least the Senate to flip very easily,
Yeah.
because any voter who was on the fence
Mhm.
might have thought, okay, since there's a black Democrat in the White House,
I might vote for the
I'd
white
rather send a white Republican
guy.
to the Senate
To balance the whole
to balance the whole thing.
whole thing out. Cool. Thanks so much for joining us, Ba. This has been
Thank
a
you
pleasure
for
to talk.
having me.
So this is where we end.